What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Marcus here once again. This is Black Boy You Need Therapy, where I'm using my experiences this past year in therapy to hopefully inspire more black men to seek mental health treatment. One of the major contributing factors to depression, or at least to my depression, was holding on to past mistakes, feeling guilty over just stupid things that you've done or things that you didn't realize you were doing, things that either hurt your goals or worse, maybe even hurt someone else. And I had a really tough time letting go of my past mistakes. And if I'm being honest, I still do. I tend to hold on to things that I do wrong for a really long time. So today we're gonna talk about it, we're gonna get into it, and as always, we're gonna try to heal. Before you get started, you know the drill. Smash the like button, make sure you subscribe, and if you really wanna be a supporter, go ahead and click the link to my Patreon. The link is in the description. So this past year, I've made a lot of surprising revelations while in therapy. This is one of the reasons why therapy is so important for everyone. It's why it's helped me so much. It's helped me immeasurably over this past year, and it can do the same for you. And you need to go ahead and seek out a therapist ASAP. One of those revelations is how much my guilt over mistakes I made in the past has contributed to my depression. When my therapist brought this up, she asked me about the past, and I kept bringing up the same things over and over and over again. I brought up failing my mom. I brought up losing the house. That's why I was in therapy to begin with. I brought up failing in my relationship. But it wasn't just that. I was bringing up stuff from literally 20 years ago at this point. I brought up blowing the 50 grand my dad left me when I was 18. My dad passed away in 2001, left me about 50 grand, and that money was gone in a little bit more than a year. And to this day, 20 years later, I still kick myself in the butt about that, and I still feel guilty about that. And my therapist, she realized that I hold on to my mistakes a lot. And she said this is a major thing with people with depression, is we hold on to our guilt and our past missteps. We hold on to them, and we hold on to the pain that it causes us, and it makes us feel more depressed because we feel like our past mistakes are going to influence our future goals, our future aspirations. And my therapist, and really anybody who knows any better, knows that that's not the case at all, or at least it doesn't have to be. The first thing you have to realize is that everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has and will make big missteps in life, and you are certainly not by yourself. No matter how stupid the mistake was, no matter how dumb or irresponsible you feel for making those mistakes, you're not by yourself. Everyone has made those kinds of mistakes. Everyone has things in their past that they would rather forget. And you know what? It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. So the first step is to acknowledge that you made those mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, and your mistakes are no worse than anyone else's. Well, unless you're a murderer. So therapy helped me realize that, part of battling depression is fighting the urge to just relive those mistakes and those missteps over and over and over in your head. This is definitely a problem that I still have. I rerun the worst parts of my past over and over and over in my head like a doom loop. And it just drives me further and further and further down into a depression, into a funk. And it takes days for me to pull myself up out of. So therapy definitely taught me that you have to combat that, and you have to forgive yourself, which we'll get into in a minute. So not to sound like a broken record, but I've gone over, my most recent mistakes. uh, losing guardianship of my mom, who has dementia, and I was her legal guardian for about 10 years. And with that came foreclosing on the house at around the same time, losing the house, failing as a writer, or at least thinking I was failing as a writer, and breaking up with my girlfriend. And when it came to what I felt guilty about, you could take your pick. If I wasn't feeling guilty about losing guardianship of my mom, I was feeling terrible about failing in my relationship. If I wasn't feeling terrible about losing the family house, I felt terrible that my writing career was going nowhere. So whenever I dodged one mistake, there was another mistake right behind it for me to knock into and remind me how much I suck. And I think when it comes to depression, you're dwelling on your mistakes, and I most certainly did. And when it came to my mistakes, not only did I dwell on them, I dwelled on them in a way where I always thought about what I could have done better. When it came to managing my mom's estate, I could have done better with the house. I knew the house was falling apart, and I kept pushing everything further and further down, and the house just kept falling apart more and needed more money to go into it, more time, more energy, until we passed the point of no return and we just couldn't afford to keep the mortgage going, to pay for the constant repairs to the roof, to the windows, to the boiler, to the chimney. Everything was falling apart because I had pushed everything as far back as I possibly could instead of handling things right up front in the beginning as soon as I started guardianship. When it came to being my mom's guardian, I could have done better. One thing I didn't realize until down the road was that being a guardian, you're not just responsible for their personal well-being, you're responsible for their mental well-being as well. That means making sure they're engaged, making sure they have things to do every day. And I could have done a lot better at that. She was in an adult day center, which is nice, but it wasn't enough. I could have maintained contact with some relatives more than I did at the time. I could have let people know how bad her dementia was and that she needed people to talk to more often. And I didn't. I didn't do a good job of that at all. And I can go on and on and on, just as I'm sure you can, about all your mistakes and all your past missteps, everything you've ever done wrong in your life. If you are experiencing depression, I'm sure a lot of this sounds very familiar to you. Now, when it comes to your past mistakes, one thing that you have to do is hold yourself accountable. And it sounds like I'm holding myself accountable for my past mistakes. And you feel like beating yourself up. Isn't that a way of holding yourself accountable? Not in a healthy way. Holding yourself accountable is saying, yes, I made this mistake. I own up to it. I'm not running from it. Holding yourself accountable means you're not blaming anybody else for your mistakes. And if you're suffering from depression, and if you're anything like me, you most certainly don't blame anybody else. It's all on you. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people with depression who blame other people, blame the world, blame their circumstances for making mistakes. At the end of the day, your mistakes are your mistakes, and you have to own up to that. You have to own up, I made this mistake, I'm responsible, and I'm gonna learn from it. Because at the end of the day, if you don't hold yourself to task, that could be just as harmful as beating yourself up over every tiny mistake you ever made. We all need to improve ourselves. We all need to learn from our mistakes. And realizing that is really the first step to resolving those issues. Another part of holding yourself accountable is learning to take criticism. Now, your depression probably isn't the same as my depression, which means maybe you beat yourself up like I do. Maybe you run away from your mistakes and pretend that they don't happen. And another part of running away from your mistakes is not being able to take even the most constructive criticism. In my case, I have trouble taking criticism because criticism to me just confirms how terrible I am at anything. When I get criticized, I immediately want to go crawl into a corner and roll up into a ball and just disintegrate. Now, for you or for other people, criticism, you don't want to take it. You just want to run away from it. It goes in one ear, out the other. You just can't handle it. And that's just as bad. Now, even though we all should be good at taking constructive criticism that's coming from a loving place, that doesn't mean that all criticism is good. We've all known people who criticize as a way of condescending, as a way of just putting you down, and they're trying to make you feel bad on purpose as a way to lift themselves up. We have to know the difference between constructive criticism and needless criticism. And once you know that difference, you can deal with it accordingly. And lastly, when it comes to taking criticism, for those of us who can't take criticism, we tend to gravitate towards people who just tell us what we want to hear. Now, I can't say that I'm immune to this. I think it's just human nature. When people sing our praises, we want to be around those people more. Yes. Shower me with adulation. Oh, you think I'm gonna be the Black Stephen King? Well, I kinda knew that already. Oh, you think I look sexier with the glasses on? Noted. We all need supportive people in our lives, but sometimes the most supportive person in the world is the person who gonna tell you about yourself. So I challenge everybody watching this right now to think about your closest friend, your closest relative, and ask yourself, when's the last time this person told me something I really did not want to hear, but it turned out to be true, and it turned out to be something I needed to hear? When was the last time this person told me about myself? Told me about a flaw I had that I need to work on? If you can't think of any time that your best friend or your closest relative told you a hard truth about yourself, if your entire relationship with the people closest to you has been nothing but them showering you with compliments and agreeing with you that any mistakes or hardships in your life is all due to other people, you might need to rethink that relationship. The best relationships we can have are people who are going to be honest with us, even when it's hard to hear. So that brings me to one of the best lessons that I'm still trying to learn in therapy. And it's a lesson that when you start therapy, hopefully you'll learn as well. And that is, you need to forgive yourself. You need to forgive yourself. And that's hard. When you've made mistakes that can be hard for you to live with, it's hard to forgive yourself. You feel that you are deserving of every bad thing that happens to you thereafter. But if you're willing to grow and if you're willing to learn from your mistakes, then you deserve to be forgiven. Holding on to the past, whether it's holding on to old grudges or if it's holding on to guilt, in the end, the only person that hurts is you. And it adds to your depression, which never leads anywhere good. So this part of battling your depression means you can't hide from your problems, you can't run from your past mistakes, but you also can't let them weigh you down like a ton of bricks that won't let you move on. Engage with your mistakes. Talk about them. Tell people you care about them. Get a therapist and talk them out. The only way through is to learn, and learning is often the most difficult part, but that's why we're here. So take that first step. Engage with your mistakes, your missteps, write them out, talk about them, and maybe one day we can all move past them and be that much further down the road to healing.